Hey everyone, I think we're onto something special. We realize that knowledge graphs are a tool that are going to allow us to become much more creative and change the creative process. See, previously knowledge graphs were restricted to machine learning algorithms and deep neural networks to understand relationships between data. But more recently, software like Obsidian and Rome have allowed us to take that out of the deep learning and bring it into our own personal knowledge management systems. In this video, I'm going to show you the top 5 things you need to know in order to format your Markdown files and elevate your note-taking game. Let's get started. As a quick reminder, we're using David Perell's essays to seed our ideas for this example knowledge graph that we are growing over the next series of videos. In the first video, we used essays 1 through 5. In today's videos, we'll be using essays 6 through 10 of his 50 essay project. I'm going to go ahead and take the raw text from his essays and put them into my knowledge graph, just like I did in the first video. Welcome back. I told you in this video, I'm going to show you 5 tips to elevate your Markdown game. Remember, Markdown is a way that we can format our simple text to make it look a little bit nicer, to help organize some ideas, to call out and emphasize different elements that we want. So the activity today is really to teach you the first 5 things that you need to know in order to get started with Markdown. Tip number 1, let's get started with headers. I want to show you something here. So if we go down to my Obsidian graph, we could start a new note. We'll just call this note demo. Headers are different sections of our notes where we can make our text automatically larger and bold corresponding to the different types of information within it. So let's look at an example here. This is normal text, but what we can do in the extreme case is we can put a single pound sign and then we can type header 1. In order to look at this, the easiest thing will be to open up this note in preview mode right next to our note in edit mode. The way that we do this is going to be to come over to our note called demo here, and we can hold down the command button on a Mac or the control button on a Windows machine and click, and we can open up the same note right next to it. We can do this to any note. Again, go ahead and try it. We can go ahead and continue to open up, and so on, and we can open up these notes all next to each other. I'll get rid of all of these that I just opened and come back to the first one. Okay. So remember to look in preview mode, we can switch this to preview. So this will automatically live update. So you can see our normal text here is just plain text, and we can then put a number sign or the pound sign, a space, and then the text after it, and that will indicate a header. So if we do that and we start typing below it, this is text below the header, this is what it looks like. Now, in Markdown, we have 6 different header styles that we can work with. The single number sign is going to be the largest header, and we can then move a little bit smaller. Header 2, this is more text. Header 3, getting smaller now. Header 4, even smaller. Header 5, tiny. Header 6, smallest. Let's try 7. Shouldn't work. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Header 7. Nope. So what you can see is the number signs in front of your text with a single space are going to indicate that this is text that will be handled a special way. And this special way is going to then assign a standard size and font thickness, or boldness in this case, to our text. And we can now see that this is going to be a way for us to take a note and to maybe separate some ideas within that note. In one of the previous videos, I didn't tell you that I was doing this, but what I oftentimes do in my notes is I have a related section. So I basically at the bottom of the note make a header called related, and then I'll add a couple of linked notes that then are going to be related to the note that I'm thinking about. So if there's no way for me to directly link or connect a note to another note, I can just put related, and that's like a trigger for me to say, this makes me think of this. And so these are headers. So let's see how this looks in real time now. I'm going to close my demo note. I'm going to open up essay number 6 of David's. If you haven't read this yet, pause the video now, read it, and come back and join us. If you have read it, then go ahead and follow along. His essay here is mostly about how writing can save time. Writing is an investment in David's mind, and when we write, that allows us to create pieces that we can then use for other writing projects. This is the main, I think, point of this essay. So what we can do is we can create a new note, and let's just call this one writing. I think that David's going to be talking a lot about writing, and in this case, let's first define it. Writing is a process. Remember, we have an essay called process, or a note called process, that allows us to think. This is the second main point that he makes in his essay. So writing is a process that allows us to think. Writing can help us develop our ideas. That's actually too much related to what we just said. So writing can help us, writing can lead us to generate blocks that can be reused. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to come down here and I'm going to put related. And this is going to now be a third level header. And this makes me think of first principles. I don't have this note yet, but what I can do is I can use this as a placeholder. Now, if I come and I open up this note and I look in preview mode, I see two things. I can see that this first link that I have here is going to point to the note that we have about process. I can go back. I can see the second thing is related now becomes a third level header. And the other thing is that first principles, while it is not a note yet, if I click on this, it will automatically generate the note. And it will then show me that the note is empty. So let's take a look. So we click here, we can see I have a note now called first principles, and this is empty. Let's go ahead and just add a couple of ideas about first principles. First principles are ideas. They're actually are abstract and distilled ideas that, how do we describe first principles? That really are building blocks of thinking. And so now what I have is, in David's essay, he describes this analogy of a Lego. So we can also put here, this is related to Legos, or similar to Legos. So now we can again start to build this up. We can go back to writing. Let's go back to David's essay, Writing Can Save You Time. So what we have here is now we can go like this. We can add our oh, did that backwards. Remember, the name of the note goes first and the alternative title that you want goes second. So writing can save you time. Publishing ideas is how you create intellectual capital, makes your ideas permanent. When he comes down here and he talks about these Legos, what we can do here is we can, let's try this. Similarly, we'll go first principles. So these first principles are these conceptual building blocks. And the idea is that writing is a process that allows us to think. It can lead us to generate blocks that can be reused, just like first principles. Something like this. So the idea is you write, you think, you put your ideas on paper, you can then take those ideas and remix them later on. So maybe we'll keep the related and we'll just say this links to efficiency. And maybe we'll then have an idea or explore this idea about what efficiency is and how we can think about efficiency in process, right? Efficiency is really thinking about process and whether our processes are efficient or not. So this is an example now where we can use this formatting and we can now automatically and quickly create some different levels. I oftentimes use the 3rd level header because the 1st level header is far too big, and of course the 6th level header is far too small. But you will, through trial and error, figure out what's best for you. Okay, on to the second tip. The second tip that we're going to explore is all about emphasis. Oftentimes, when we read or think something and we want to create a note about it, we will want to emphasize different parts. So let's see what that looks like. All right, next essay and tip number 2, let's add some emphasis. David's next essay is about creating a personal podcast. This is an idea he has. Go ahead, take a quick look, read the essay, and come back and join us when you're done with it. So it's interesting. In this essay, a writer, David Perell, makes the case against writing. Here, he pitches the idea that starting a personal podcast would be a way for you to share your ideas with the world, just like writing is a way for you to share your ideas with the world. So let's distill some of these ideas and create some notes. All right, so we added a couple of ideas about his essay here. And what I want to show you is how to add emphasis to some of these ideas. So let's take this as an example. I created a note called podcast. A podcast is essentially speaking and recording your thoughts for expanded scope and preservation. Really what I want to say here is expanded reach and preservation. Now, if I really want to highlight reach and preservation, the 2 key ideas within this podcast note, what I can do is I can double click and then I can hit Command B. This is going to be a shortcut to bold in our preview mode. So again, if I open up this note and I switch it to preview mode, you can see one way to add emphasis is by bolding through this shortcut. So you can see reach now in preview mode is bolded. I can do the same thing by adding 2 asterisks on the front end and 2 asterisks on the back end. The reason we add this on both the front and the back is because we have to enclose the text that we want to emphasize. This is the same way that we add a double bracket on the front and a double bracket on the back of the text that we want to connect with another note. If we don't add that back double bracket, or if we don't add the back asterisks, what ends up happening is we will just bold the rest of the text because the software is assuming that you're starting this, but you don't ever stop it. So we need to make sure to add both. So this is one way to add bold, to add emphasis on the most important ideas. And you can now see in preview mode that we have the reach and preservation as the 2 key ideas. Now this is important to add emphasis and to add some of this formatting, because eventually you will get to the point where you will be reviewing your notes, you'll be adding to your notes, and it's important to get the key ideas out and have them resonate with you in a quick and meaningful way. There's another way to add emphasis, and this would be through italics. So let's go ahead and find an example where we want to italicize a key point. As one example, let's say we want to add some emphasis to a note. So within our essay here, let's go to the speaking note. So speaking or starting a podcast is a way to share your ideas with the world. Let's say we want to emphasize the idea share here. We could bold it. I want to show you how to add italics. So on a Mac, you want to hit Command I for the shortcut so you can highlight the word here. And what will happen is we'll add 1 asterisk on the front and 1 on the back. If we go to preview mode now, same procedure, we can see share is now in italics. It doesn't add as much emphasis as bold, but we can see that this is going to now add emphasis to this idea. Speaking or starting a podcast is one way to share your ideas with the world. All right, next essay, next tip. Number 3, let's make some lists. David has an essay here called Note-Taking is Time Travel. I've already entered this into Obsidian. If you haven't yet, go ahead and do that now. Again, all the links to the essays are down below. This is an essay essentially about how taking a note will transport you back in time to the place, to the emotional state, to the mindset during which you took that note. And this, I think, makes me immediately think of the very first note that we put in about how note-taking is serendipity. And so what he makes the case here, just like old photos, is that old notes can transport you back in time. So I immediately think of my note-taking note. If I come now here to note-taking, I can see previously I said note-taking is a process and is good for remembering things and creating new ideas. Well, we're going to add a little bit to this, and this is getting to be a long sentence, and I want to make my notes simple, concise, and memorable. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to make a list. The way that I make a list in Obsidian can be one of two ways. The first, in computer programming terms, is called an unordered list. The other type is an ordered list. This would be 1, 2, 3, and so on. An unordered list is going to be a bullet point, a bullet point, a bullet point. The way that we do this in Obsidian, or generally the way that we do this in Markdown, is by adding a single dash and a space. So a single dash and a space, and you can see the note just shifted a little bit, or that line of text just shifted a little bit. This now lets me know that I am making a list. So we remember these things. I'm going to then just hit enter after this, and we will automatically make a new bullet point below. If we open this up next to, and we look and we see what does the formatted, the preview version look like, we can see we're making a bulleted, unordered list now. So note-taking is a process, which is good for remembering things, creating new ideas, and we can also say transporting yourself back in time to the mental state in which you took that note. I added a little bit more here instead of just transporting yourself back in time, because I don't want to imply that note-taking is in fact transporting yourself back in time. This is feeling a little bit verbose though, so I might end up cleaning it up a little bit in the future. But just to show you an example, this is an unordered list where we can start to add these ideas. What I need to do now though is go back to the essay and add a link to this idea about note-taking. So we say note-taking is time travel, and I have a note called note-taking. So we can look at this right here. And we now have a connection to the note called note-taking. So we can say note-taking works the same way, and so on. What else does this make me think? Let's try to look at the essay here and see if we can pull out at least one more idea. One more idea that is related to the notes that we are building in our database here. One idea that I pull out here related to a note we already have is about forgetting. We originally made the note forgetting when we were thinking about making a list that will help us remember. In this case, forgetting is also related to not just the thing we want to remember, but the time and the place and the feeling and the mental state and so on. So we have this note over here called forgetting. David here talks about forgotten memories. And so what we could do potentially is add our forgetting note here. So then we can come to our forgetting. We can also just hit Option Enter on a Mac, and we can see that not anyone remembers everything. Having a system that allows will be important. We can say note. Let's go like this. Note taking can help us remember. Remembers everything. Really, what we want to capture though is it's remembering things, but then also remembering ideas. And these are two, like a tangible thing, but there's this idea of a memory. And so we want to now think about forgetting can be a specific thing, or it can also be abstract, maybe an emotion, or it can be abstract. So something like this is starting to capture a little bit more about forgetting, not just I forgot to get milk because it was not on my grocery list. Next note, next tip. Let's look at quotes. David's next essay is called Bring a Unique Dessert. What does this look like? In the essay Bring a Unique Dessert, David uses this as an analogy for two different elements that he tries to apply to his own writing. The first is you want to try to write something new and different. This is the unique dessert idea. So in this idea, he wants to then say something that is not already being said. Find your niche, find the intersection of your experience and your interest, and write about that. The analogy that he makes in this essay is you want to bring something that is different than everybody else, such as bringing dessert to a party where everybody's bringing appetizers. The second thing is that he recognizes not everyone can bring a unique dessert. Not everyone can bring something unique and totally different. The example that he provides is in the business writing space and the blog called Stratechery. In this example, he highlights how Ben Thompson applied his own unique style to a already full and quite busy space of writing online. And so if you can't bring something totally new and different, like your unique dessert, perhaps bring a dessert that has your special flair or your special element to it. At the end of the essay, he provides some additional tips if you can't do either of these two things, such as bring a dessert that only you have the story to tell. So these are the key ideas from this essay. And what we want to do is we want to distill these down into notes. And we also want to then explore how we can use some of these quotes in our Markdown files to make it more memorable. So let's take a look. This is the paragraph where he starts to talk about in-demand topics that nobody's writing about. This is the uniqueness. So this makes me think of our note that we have on voice. Writing for yourself gives you a unique voice. Writing gives you a unique voice. Having a unique voice is key for writing. Something interesting and readable. So there's like a uniqueness here. If we come back at a party, let's see, unique twist. We'll add our voice to this. Okay. So there's like a uniqueness in having your voice on it. The second part, actually, that might not be such a good spot for it. Because right here, down when he talks about like the story, tell your story, I think that this is going to be a better spot for voice. Okay, because that's like your voice, but there's a uniqueness also. Maybe we'll start a new note called unique. When writing, strive for a topic that is unique, that only you can write about in your voice. Now, if we come back, we want to explore this idea of adding a quote to our notes. So if we come back now, we can say that at a party where people only expected, this is ice cream and a heart. Okay, so let's sort of take this idea. And what we can do is we can go to this note and we can add this idea. But we want to show that this idea is not our idea, that this is a quote related to something else. So the way that we add a quote is by this little chevron key, and we add a space. And if we open up unique now, and we look at the preview mode, we can see that this looks like a quote. This is something that is different. What I might do is I might add from David Perell essay. And what's the essay called? The essay is called Bring a Unique Dessert. So now what we have over on this side is we have a link to the source, and we have this in a quote format. So when we review this note, we can think about the example that David writes. He says, at a party where people are only expected to bring appetizers, this is the ice cream in the heart of your cake, or the Kahlua liqueur to match it, etc. So something memorable, something unique. So let's go back and add our last idea. So we have our uniqueness. We have add our voice here. What's this? This is about different point of view. Differentiation. I think differentiation is going to be an important idea. So it seems like differentiation is going to be a distinct concept from unique, because unique would be totally new. Differentiation would be a similar idea with your twist on it. Okay, so what does that look like here? We can create a new note called differentiation. We could say differentiation is taking an, we'll say, old idea, but putting your twist on it. If we come back to the essay, the example that he gives be this. We can go back to here. And remember, we're going to then do this. We're going to say, David Perell essay, and this is going to be bring a unique dessert. So if we preview it, this is what it looks like now, and we now have a quote within this. So this could be a way for us to remember, and in fact, a way for us to transport ourselves back in time, just like the note that we talked about before this one, to the time and place that we came up with this differentiation idea. We could say, aha, we came up with this idea because David wrote about this unique dessert analogy. Last essay, last tip. I want to show you how to add an image into your note. This will allow you to get much richer notes than you otherwise would. I won't get into all the different types of files that you can add to your notes. Let's just start with images today. So if we go to the last essay, it's called Diversify Your Vernacular. I've already copied this over and pasted it into my growing David Perell vault, and you can see that I've already linked a couple of these notes. If you haven't done that yet, you can go ahead, pause the video, do that now. But let's go back and take a look at the essay for a moment. What we can see is that this is essay number 10 of David's, and this is the first time that he's added an additional image into his essay. And let's say that we want to capture that image to preserve the posterity and to really understand the point that David is trying to make. Well, what we can do first is we can drag and drop, or we can click Save this image to downloads. It doesn't matter where you save it. After we save this to downloads, we're going to go back to our note now, and we can drag and drop this in. This will be the easiest way. And what happens is, I want to show you, is that when we do this, we can see now that two things have happened. The first is that we have a new notation in our note, exclamation point, bracket, bracket, the name of the image, in this case, cleverly named 1.png, and then bracket, bracket. I'm not going to get into the specifics of what this notation means yet. I just want you to see this sort of new notation. The second thing that happened is go ahead and look over in our vault. We can see now that we have an image here called 1.png, and if we click on it, the entire image comes up in our vault. So as we drag and drop it over, we can see that both it gets copied into our vault and it gets placed into our note with this interesting notation. If we take a quick look at our David Perell vault, what we can see is that also in our folder where we save our Markdown files, we have an image now in there called 1.png. And again, this was copied over. This is what Obsidian will do for you. If we look at our note now in preview mode, as we've done before, what you can see is this image is now preserved within our note. Let's go ahead and do that for the second image in David's essay. So now we have two essays with two images embedded within, and that really enhances our note and preserves what David Perell was originally trying to tell us. So there we have it. We went through 5 tips to elevate your Obsidian Markdown game. We started with headers. We then went to emphasis. We added some lists, some quotes, and finally, some images that are now embedded within our notes. With that, you now have the power to really start to enhance these notes and make them memorable for you. If you like this video, let us know. If you want to follow along to the next video, where we'll be going into more of the details of Obsidian and this knowledge graph generating software, go ahead, hit the light bulb in the corner, subscribe, and you'll be alerted to when we release new videos.